Okay, welcome to part 3. Hopefully this is the last part. In this part, we're going to go through the Pyro solver itself within the Pyro sim, and then we're going to look at Pyro import and then Pyro look. And finally, we're going to look at tasks and topnet. Okay, so I'm going to go through that, and maybe I will go through my setup in Karma as well. But these are generic, all right? So anyway, so first we will dive into PyroSim. Okay, so PyroSolver. PyroSolver, if I flip through to the original file, as you can see, this is the original PyroSolver, which is right now, maybe legacy, may not be, I don't know, okay? But it is definitely used a lot still, okay? So here's the legacy PyroSolver, and you can see all of these tabs. These tabs have changed slightly. Well, simulation is still there, combustion is still there, and shape is there. But what it contains has changed. Okay, so I'm going to go through it directly here. I'm not going to refer back to the original file. Okay, so here's the PyroSolver. All the tabs look the same, apart from combustion tab in legacy solver has changed to flames. Okay, so the contents of the tabs itself have changed significantly in Sparse Pyro. Okay, so timescale, as you know what it is, you just increase it and the explosion goes faster. That's what that is. And viscosity. Viscosity is when you want to get a blur factor onto the velocity field. So it pushes it up. I have a file I will show you, okay? But these are the initial settings that if you want to copy it, you go ahead and do that, right? So let me actually pull this down a little bit so you can see its entirety. There you go. So these are the settings: temperature, diffusion, reflection amount, advection, reflection, cooling rate, ambient, reference temperature, buoyancy scale. So advection here is just an advection, which advects the velocity. And you'll see here, so injects energy lost due to pressure projection back in a simulation. Okay, so you can see it's add vel reflect. Okay, so that's a velocity injection basically. And well, that's my understanding anyway. All right, so temperature diffusion. Temperature diffusion is a blur factor on temperature field. Now, I have explained a lot of this in the original tutorial, okay? So you may want to check that out over there. Cooling rate, as you know, the higher this is, the faster the explosion cools down. Let me just pull this out here. Okay, so the higher this is, the higher the cooling rate, the faster it cools down, all right? Ambient temperature and reference temperature are new parameters in Sparse solver. So ambient temperature corresponds to the temperature to a value of 0. Okay, that'll be your room temperature, and then the reference temperature will be what your reference temperature will be when it's 1. Okay, so temperature corresponding to value of 1 in the temperature field in Kelvin. So this is used to calculate the strength of buoyancy force, and this is important. Okay, so as I said, I will show you a clip after this, and you can just note down these values for now. We're going to flames, and I've set the lifespan to 16, so that the flames is basically the height in the original PyroSolver. Okay, so it's just flame lifespan, it's called here. And then you got your 3 subcategories: smoke, temperature, and expansion. As you know what smoke does, if you add smoke, it'll just keep adding the smoke amount. And the flame range is the flame range. Let me actually show you that. So, come on. I'll disable the sim for now, okay? So, if I go into Pyro import, and let me put in a volume slice, and connect it to, let's say, here, because that's where I'm bringing the stuff in. So here is our current explosion, okay, and it's currently looking at density. I don't want that, so let's look at flame, and I'll change the attribute to flame. Okay, so this range here, if I plug in 0.4 in here, that's the range we are looking at to add smoke, okay? And it's the same with temperature, and it's the same with expansion, okay? So that's the range we're looking at, all right? So there it is. Okay, so this remap is how much of it between the lower and the upper range you want to emit smoke. So obviously in our case, it'll be right in between, it emits more smoke. So those are the values. And temperature is exactly the same. I have not remapped the flame, and the range is the same. I'm only adding a little bit. I don't want to add too much. The reason why I don't want to add too much is because the temperature keeps pushing it up and also keep adding, and that is not good when it comes to shading. Okay, so that's why I only add a little bit. We don't even need to do that, by the way. You don't have to, because the temperature is coming from the source anyways, you know, like so temperature is coming from the source anyway, so we are adding temperature here. So I'm not entirely certain why this is a separate field here, but you know, I'm sure there's a reason for it, but I don't really know. But here I add 0.2 anyway, right? So expansion, as you know, expands the explosion out. Okay, so again, I'm using the same thing, and you can copy these values. All right, good. So next is shape, and I have explained a lot of these shape contents in the other tutorial. Please go check that out. So I'm only adding 3 here: disturbance, shredding, and turbulence. And because I don't want to add dissipation, because I have a microsolver for that. And in Pyro solver itself, I have not enabled dissipation. All right. So when we look at disturbance, I have a threshold field density in the cutoff. I mean, again, you know, you can copy these values, and you have block-based and continuous. I prefer to use block-based. Now, if I mentioned this before, if you purchase Stephen Nipping's tutorial, volumes, part 2, I think, it explains in detail what these are, and it's pretty awesome. Okay. So, but these are the values, and here's the important part. So originally, I don't know if you remember, I said I don't know why I've enabled this, because I don't think I'm using it, but I am, as a matter of fact. So speed is just the velocity. Well, how do I say? Velocity contains the actual length and the rotation or direction, and the speed only contains the actual velocity. All right. I'm sure, say that when enabled, the speed field is computed at each time step. This field stores length of velocity. There you go. So it only stores the length, okay? And the rotation is ignored. And that's what we are using for the control field for our disturbance. And I have not remapped the control field, but it's there if you want. And then you go into shredding. Shredding, I've shredded by 2. Again, I've explained this in the other tutorial. Okay, so I'm shredding the field flame. So it shreds the flame when it, you know, in this range here. I've not adjusted the range. Maybe I can, or you can, of course. And the block size and pulse. Pulse length, how fast it goes, like the length of time in seconds that noise pattern is held fixed. Okay, so the lower it is, the rapid movement it is going to have. Okay. So that's just another noise thing, like linearity, I think. Roughness and max octaves. I have not changed any of this here. By the way, you can visualize these things by using this checkbox. You can't see it here because I've disabled the sim, right? Oh man, that messed up. Okay. Anyway, shredding. Went through shredding now. That's good. Turbulence. So turbulence, I'm using control field density, and these are the values. The swirl size is very important, okay, and the grain size as well. So the bigger the swirl, the bigger swirls you'll see, obviously. Okay, but it all depends on the density. Okay, so the more the density, the more swirls you'll start to see. Okay, so that's that. The influence field is the field determines which areas are affected by turbulence. So you must have both temperature and the density in place. But I have set the threshold field to 0. Basically, that means it doesn't affect. It doesn't get affected by temperature at all. Okay, so that's that. Advanced, I've not actually changed anything in the color because we are not using color here. And then advanced, this is an important one. In reference fields, this is the field which it looks at to expand this box. Originally, by default, it's only density and flame, and I have added temperature, and I've increased the padding. Okay, that's that. And advection, I've changed the advection to BFECC because I know that this really served the best for me. So I set it to BFECC. All right. The rest of them I didn't really change. Everything is exactly the same. Okay. Now, I want to show you that clip that I've got here for you. So here is the original. So with the current settings in place, this is how it looks, except that I have disconnected the shockwave and trails. It's only the flare you're looking at here. Okay, so that's how it looks. Now, if I change the reference temperature, if I change the reference temperature to 10,000, which is the temperature that has an impact on the buoyancy there, that one. Okay, so this is the this is used to calculate strength of buoyancy force. Okay, so I've changed that to 10,000, and notice that now. You see how fast it's going up? So this is not going up that fast. All right. If this is what you want, go for it. Okay, so that's what that is. And I'm going to show you reference temperature at 310. And 310 is because if you look at this, temperature corresponding to value of 1 in temperature field. This ambient temperature is the temperature corresponding to value of 0. There's no point in putting this anything below 300, okay? That's why I put in 310, all right? So here it is. So it's not moving that much, especially, particularly it's actually stopping it from moving up, okay? And that's important to understand because the original is moving, consistently. And this is going like super fast, and this is stopping it going further up. Okay, important differences. Okay, so next is this one. So you got temperature diffusion, all right? So temperature diffusion is set to 1 here. By the way, I've only changed one parameter at a time, so you can always refer the references between the original and the other clip, okay? Because at this point, I have not left the temperature to 10,000 and, temperature diffusion at 1. I've left the temperature at the original value, which is 3,000, and the temperature diffusion is set to 1 at this point, okay? So I'm just gonna zoom in a little bit, maybe there you go. Okay, so I'm gonna run that now. Watch this. You see how it disconnects very fast? Okay, I'm gonna stop it right there, okay? So if you look at temperature diffusion itself, it looks stunning. As a matter of fact, compared to this one, it looks much, much better. But when you increase temperature diffusion, or when the values of temperature diffusion is high, it does a lot of calculations. So this will significantly slow your sim down, and that is why you see that this cut out earlier. I've only, these are flipbooks, 30 frames each. This one's cut off early because it took way too long, so I cut it, all right? But that's what it is, okay? So if you look at it, oops, there. That fireball there looks really beautiful. However, obviously you got to pay a cost, which is time. All right. And the next one is temperature diffusion set to 0.1 and compared to the original. Okay, so there you go. That looks good as well. Okay, and this one is temperature addition. Now, temperature addition comes from here. So here is the temperature addition I was talking to you about earlier, where I said that I don't want too much of this because it will affect our shader. I've changed this to 1, and here's the difference. So that is the temperature addition of 1, and this is the original. It's probably hard to compare the two, but hopefully you can. With all of this in the middle, it's probably a little distracting, but right. So there it is, and there's the original. Okay, this looks good. I'm not saying no, but you will have trouble doing shader for that. Okay. Okay, so next is viscosity. Viscosity is when it affects the velocity in a way that it appears like a liquid, you know, like it's an underwater explosion sort of thing. So if I just play this, like a lot of mushroomy things going on there. Okay, there. So that's viscosity, and these are the advection reflection. Okay, so that one is a single projection 0.05, a temperature diffusion of 0.1, and this is a single projection 0.05, temperature diffusion of 0.1, and temperature addition of 0.3. Because I found that that was finally what I kind of liked. But anyway, here it is. I'll play it for you. So I kind of like this one a lot more compared to this one. Less temperature addition. Temperature addition on this one is 0.2. Okay, this is 0.3. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I mean, whatever you choose. Okay, so this is the first one, and I'm going to go to the next file. Bear with me. So here's another one. Here is the original, and here I'm adjusting the ambient temperature to 2500, which is the value when it's supposed to be 0. And I'll just show you there. So this is the temperature. Oops. Come on. Right, corresponding to value of 0 in the temperature field. Okay, so there's no point in taking this beyond 3000 because then it'll be the other way around. So this is at 2500, this is at 0. Okay, so there you go. You see how if the ambient temperature is either 0 or the difference between the reference temperature and ambient temperature is very less, it doesn't allow it to go up a lot. Okay, the buoyancy force is significantly affected. Yet in the original, the difference between the two is 2700 Kelvin. The difference between the two here is 3000, yet the ambient temperature itself is 0, meaning the room temperature is very cold. Okay, and that's why it doesn't rise. On this one, the difference between the ambient and the reference is only 500. And hence it doesn't go up a lot. All right, so these are single projection 0.5, single projection 0.05. This is the advection, and advection off, completely disabled. So if it's disabled, all right. So those are the three, and you can check that out now. As you can see, advection off is very good as well as single projection 0.05. And that's why, if you notice on this one here, I've actually put in single projection 0.05 and temperature diffusion of 0.1. Okay. So let me go back in here. All right. So this one is double projection 0.95, double projection 0.5, and double projection 0.05. All right. I'm going to run this. There, it's got a lot more punch. It's pushing it up that way. You can see that very clearly here at 0.95. So whichever you want to use, single or double projection. I preferred the single but you may like double projection. But hey, here it is for you. And what does it say here? So if you look at this reflection amount, fraction of the projected velocities to re-inject when advection reflection is not set to disabled. Values near 1 will do a better job of conserving energy, but may result in instabilities. All right, so it is going to push the velocities. All right, good. Or re-inject the velocities, projected velocities. All right, good. So hopefully that gives you an understanding of all of these things, and I will include this file as well. Well, at least a screenshot, I guess. I'm sure. So there. Okay. Maybe there. Right. Good. Okay, so we're gonna now. That's the end of Pyro Solver. To be honest, there's nothing else. I have actually set them as originally set out, but you can change them to whatever you want. Obviously, you don't need me to explain gravity. Gravity is just the usual gravity stuff. Okay, so I'm gonna get out, and I'm gonna jump straight into Pyro import. Right. So before 18.5, we used to bring in DOP import. And this one, we're bringing in object merge, and we're connecting it like this way. Okay. Now this is from one of the example files that I got off SideFX website. All right. And I believe it may well do the same when you use the shelf tool here in the Sparse solver. Okay. So you got your object PyroSim, which is the actual PyroSim itself here. And then you're looking for density inside, and temperature, flame, and velocity. I'm bringing all that. And then I'm also bringing in our trails, source out trails, directly the rasterized output. I told you this in part 2. And then we're going into Pyro look here, where the look is set. And the beauty about this is that Pyro look represents pretty close to what you're going to get in Mantra. So you don't need to render it like 100 times to get the look you want. Here you can adjust it and you're pretty much set. And if you render it, it's going to come up with pretty much the same result. All right. And that's the beauty of this Pyro look 4. Okay. So I don't understand much of this, but I will go through as much as I can. Okay. Again, as I mentioned, if you really want to understand this in detail, Stephen Nickping's Volumes version 2 tutorial is the best. Go check it out. So here is the quick steps. Okay. So you get, if you click on create material, it creates material, and it'll ask you where do you want to put it. In my case, I put it in material context, and this is currently connected, which is the Pyro shader here. And as you can see, all of these are actually still hooked up to this value. So if I change this to 13, there you go, changes. And you can see that is also changing the way it looks here. The density range. This is actually a very cool tool where you can just play around with it without wasting a lot of time. The important part here is the scatter, which is brand new to 18.5. Oh, I forgot about more quick steps. I think break material references. If you want to, let's say, you want to adjust some stuff here, because there are some elements here that is not available on this site. So for example, use control volume is not here. Yeah, so if you want to use that, you want to make changes here, you can do that. And if you want to make further changes here, I would suggest you disconnect it, break material references, and then go in, edit content, and then you can go in and change it. All right, so let's see here, allow editing of contents, and then dive in. There's the big network. Okay, so I'm not going to do that. That's current definition. All right, so again, color with CD volume is not available here, if you notice. All right, that is also an important thing. So when turned on, smoke color set by the smoke color parameter, and it's multiplied by CD color volume if it exists to obtain the final smoke color. I've been researching quite a lot about this lately, and I may do another tutorial on explosions with varied colors of smoke. Okay, I'm not talking red, green, yellow, or whatever, but more dust explosion sort of style. All right, but for now, I'm going to leave it. Let's move on to scatter. Scatter. So scatter is a blur factor, basically, based on the temperature. Because if you look here, we're bringing in temperature and whatnot. So if I were to delete that, you're gonna see it disappear, because the scatter uses temperature as its main core to get these values. Okay. So I need to enable the temperature to get that. All right, good. So here's your scale. So if I were to change it to 2500, you'll see more of it, obviously. And the hot score scale is basically the core of the scatter. So if I were to bring it to 0, you're not seeing much difference because the scale is 2500. So if I reduce it to 250, back again, I see that. And maybe if I up this to 1000, there you go. You can see clearly where the core is. This can be very good, all right? But what did I set it as? Okay, I'm gonna leave it at 100, all right? Because that actually worked really well for me. Obviously, you can play around with that. The source range, I played around with this a lot. For example, if I change this to 2 to 4, so you see, it's completely mucked it up, all right? So, mucked it up is a British word, I guess, if you've not heard of it before. Right, so what is the default here? So 0.1 to 1, this is what you're gonna get. The further you push this, the further it's gonna go in towards the core, okay? So if you leave this at 0, it's gonna blur all the way out. We definitely don't want that. That looks ugly. All right, so you need to crush it in. You see that? That's the difference. And here, you don't want it to go to 1, because you'll see the difference now. If it's 0.5, it makes it brighter wherever it is. If not, if I make this 4 for an example, it'll just be sort of the same intensity all across, okay? That's why you want to crush this. So the difference between these two values need to be as close as possible, and this definitely as away from a value of 0, because as soon as you go to 0, all of this gets the blur factor, which is the temperature as well. Okay. And blur scatter. So if you disable this, you're just gonna see the actual temperature values. All right. So this is the actual temperature. This is why you need blur, and this is where they made it really, really cool. And again, Applied Houdini explains everything about this, okay? How this whole thing works is explained in detail there. All right, so I'm not going to talk much about this because I don't understand a lot about this, apart from the fact that it is a blur thing. But you can play around with this, okay? So these are the values. I'm sure you can copy. Yeah, so these are the values for density, smoke, by the way, and scatter is this. So enable mask. If I uncheck this, you'll see this, okay? And mask is the reason why you get this little burnt out regions, and this is very, very important, because if you don't have that, it just looks not like a fire or an explosion, sorry, okay? All right, let me try and push this out, and I have done this before. So mask center is, let me just push this out, right? So it pushes this out, okay? So that's the mask center, and the mask width, I think it is that how far out you want the mask to go out, basically. Maybe not. Again, as I said, you know, I have very little. I played around very little with this part here. But these are the values that worked for me. Okay, so I'm not gonna sit here and tell you this is how it is when I don't actually know if that's how it is. All right, so okay, all right, so that's that. Fire. So fire, if I disable it, you're just gonna lose some hotness around here, and if I enable it, you'll just get that back a little bit. All right, so it's not big of a deal, especially in the trails. You'll see that a lot. So there, you lost that. I mean, you don't have to use enable fire. I don't know, by default I think this is disabled, to be honest, but anyway, so I'm going to enable it in our case, and these are the settings. I think this is default, by the way. I have not changed any of this. Maybe if you use the shelf tool, you'll get this. I'm fairly certain. Okay, but here are the values anyway. So these are, again, as I said, by default. All right, secondary fire. All right, so this is why I brought this part here in. So if I disable the secondary fire, you see that disappear, these parts here. There you go, that's just come back. And that's a pretty cool thing that they introduced, side effects. So, and the settings, obviously you can go higher if you want. It's just gonna look, you know, too much. So there's the range, and you can change this range to tighten it a little bit if you want. I honestly don't see any difference because it's just a little bit here. And that's the rest of them. That's good. And the bindings are all automatically set. If you've got a different secondary fire, you can call it here. Okay, so that's where it comes from. Trail temperature, the scatter volume, all of this. Okay. The best part of this is that I have a file cache after the Pyro look. Okay, and the reason behind that is because now we have trail temperature and scatter available as volumes for us, because prior to this you won't have this. So if I look at here, you have temperature, density, flame, velocity, and that's it. You don't have scatter for starter. Obviously trail temperature comes from here, but the scatter, which is the most important one for your shader. Okay, got a file cache which caches to BGEOSE. I'll explain the wedge index shortly. And then you got a VDB conversion where I take it to Blender, and I've got a tutorial on Blender shader for 18.5 explosions already out. Check the link in the description. Okay, I'll leave it for you. And then I export it to VDB. I convert it, and then I export it as VDB.VDB file. So, and then I got an output here, just an output. No matter where you have your display flag here, that doesn't matter. This will what be rendered on the outside. That's why you put an output flag. Okay, good. Render all. Render all is basically get the embers, sparks, and the explosion. That reminds me, actually, I forgot to mention about embers and sparks. So we're going to do that now, all right, before we go into render all right? So first is sparks. Okay, let me dive in. It's probably time for me to do the split screen now. So here's the original, and here's the reference file, and here's the original. Okay, so originally it was called flash lines. As you know, I changed it to sparks this time. None of this have changed. So this is a sphere. I got a normal and a mountain, and it's varying according to time, or according to frame. And then I clipped it, and then I transformed it to smaller, and then I set a velocity value here and 100. Okay, I got an attribute randomize, which is velocity, and I I've set the distribution to be like this, and the options global seed. I'm not using the seed value for some reason. I will actually use that right now. Let me just set that up. Okay, now I set it to look at the seed as well. Okay, so that's good. And remember, I'm multiplying this. Okay, so that's important. So I'm getting the out points from player source, which I have explained this before. By the way, don't forget to transform it into this object. Okay, because if you have any values or any transforms on the object level here, you need to put this in. I mean, I don't have any, but you know, if just in case if you have any, you need to do this. All right, so I'm copying the points as usual, and then I'm feeding it into the popnet. Okay, popnet is purple, which means that it's being modified. And here, let me go in, and let me go in here. So everything is the same. You got your pop drag, you got your pop property, and the dynamics. Everything's here, the same as before. Okay, except for this one. So here, what have I changed? I assume it's the birth source. Nothing changed really. So originally it was tied to a frame. It's no longer the case, as you already know. And the seed now is connected to frame number as well. Originally it was just a seed, and then the life expectancy, these are all the same. Attributes, I have not changed. Maybe I should actually hook this up with seed as well, but I didn't bother doing it. It's okay, it's not a big deal. Maybe you can, you know, do like the way I did for trails, I think. Let me just show you. So in trails, I changed the velocity based on the seed and random number per frame, and the velocity between 8 and 10. Do you know what? I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it in here. Why not? So this is currently at 1, so I'll change this from 1 to, let's say, 2. Oops, not 12, 2. And I will also say plus 0.123, 121, whatever. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. So it's slightly different. Okay. So that's that. That's done. So I'm getting out of here. And then you got trail. These are all, these are no different. Okay. Maybe I should add this time warp node here as well. I will add that. There you go. I'll add this right here. Okay, good. So these are all the same. Jitter noise, I deleted it because I didn't want it. You know, it was too wiggly. I think I did explain it at the end of the original tutorial. I disabled it in the original anyway. So I've just removed it to keep it clean. I've added the time warp node here. Polywire, normal, initial temperature, and noise at temperature. I shouldn't really need these, to be honest. I will just disable them here. Because I honestly don't think I need them, all right? Because we're not even using it. I'm only using this as a light, by the way. I'm not using this as anything else. So I've deleted all of these nodes in the new one because they were originally disabled anyway. I might as well delete these and put a note here. Just give me a second. I'll put that in. Okay, I'll delete these. Good. And then I'm creating a group called Flashlines. I'll change this to Sparks. Okay, that's better. And I think, what was it? So it wasn't here originally, right? So it's important to choose the group types to be primitives. All right. I don't remember where it comes into play, but oh yes, it does. Okay, I know where it is. Basically, in Pyro import, not in Pyro import, in render all, I'm bringing in all three components and I'm caching it all because you want to cache all at once. If you want to, I mean, you can have 3 different caches if you want, but I'm caching it all at once and then I'm deleting it and extracting Embers, Sparks, and the explosion out separately. As you can see, I've selected Embers here, selected Sparse here, and then I've deleted the Sparks and Embers and left with just the explosion here. Okay. But if you notice, Embers is actually point and Sparks is primitives, and that is because Sparks have polywire. Okay, that's why this is primitive Sparks. Okay, right, let's jump into Embers. Let me save this. Jump into Embers. Embers, I think originally Embers didn't have this part here. Yeah, that's right. So Embers was originally just a sphere and a clip, which is, clipped, normal. Point velocity modified a little bit. So if I look at basic, it's from attribute, which is the normal. Yeah, that's right. And then I changed the pulse duration to 0.24 to act quickly. The rest of them are the same. And then there was originally conical noise in here as well. Nothing has been changed here. Maybe I should put in frame number here. By the way, you can use $F here, or you can use @frame as well. Okay, either way it'll change. So if I were to move this, there you go. So it'll change. All right. Yeah, that looks good to me. That's fine. All right, so I'm bringing in the points as usual from flyer source, and then I'm copying it to those points and going into PopNet, which has been modified. And if I go in here, I bet it's the frame number. So this is currently, hooked up to the frame number. This is no longer the case, and I've added this control seed and the frame here as well. Okay, and attributes, I have put in a random velocity between 10 and 20. Maybe I should hook up the seed here. So I'll say paste relative references plus. Okay, good. So it's hooked up to the seed outside. So everything changes, well, almost everything changes to seed and the frame number as well. Okay, good. Perfect. Everything else is the same, okay? As you can see, I have not changed anything else. Right. I'm going to get out. Attribute randomize. I've randomized the p-scale. Okay. Maybe I should put in. No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to change the p-scale global seed per frame because then it'll keep changing. All right. I don't think that's a good idea. But I have hooked up the seed, so that's good. Okay, so what's happening here? So I'm actually bringing, let's go, let me just make this big. And that one, like that. Okay, good. So we've got all those points there, okay? So there they are, exploding. And I'm bringing in a sphere, and I'm just creating, a mountain with a random detail values. I'll explain that shortly. Alligator, and there is no post-processing or distortion happening here, okay? So they're just default. I'm using alligator noise type. So I'm bringing in a for each point, okay? There's a for each point method. I think it's a for each. Yeah, that one, for each point, okay? So for each point that is coming in, copy the sphere and the mountain across and add that in and bring it out. So what's happening here is that you can see that the size and the shape of each one of these are different. Okay, maybe you can't really see the shape, but you can visibly see that the size is actually different and it's random. And that comes from this one. So if you go into for each end node and for each initial begin node, and you click on this create import node, it'll create this node here. By default, it's called something else. And I changed it to ITER, meaning iter or iteration. And I'm using that in this mountain here. And I'm saying your height will be a random number, and that comes from which iteration you are in. Okay, so detail will give us the number of the iteration. So you would say detail, open brackets, look at this node and look at the iteration number, comma 0. And that'll give us a random value. Okay, and currently it's at 0.74498. If I were to choose single pass here, single pass, and let me open up this side, Embers, and pin the side, and on this one I'll just change this. There, you can see that the height is changing. Okay, I'm just gonna do for everything. So all of these changes for every iteration that are coming in, and that's why you see a difference in everything. So basically I said the element size changed per that, and your offset by the same thing. And I've added a number here at the end. That's all that is. Okay. So, and then I'm grouping it, and I showed you why I want to group it. It's a primitives group. That's surprising, and I must have missed something here in that case. If I go into render all, I can just delete it using primitives. Can I? Just give me 1 second. Let me have a look at this. Oh, it's my bad. It's supposed to be primitives. Okay, that's fine. I think I originally was just bringing in the points. I didn't do this part here, and after I did the part, obviously I messed that up. Okay, good. So here I'm deleting that and deleting this. I need to change this to Sparse, actually. Sparse. And delete Embers is going to be primitives. Now you've got the explosion, and then you got the hopefully got the sparks. Nope. Okay, why are you not showing up? Oh yeah, it is showing up. I can see. There you go. Okay, and there are your embers, and there's your explosion. All right, good. Okay, perfect. So that's explained. Crashed. Great. Okay, we're back. It crashed for some reason. Anyway, so I'm gonna get out. Luckily I saved it, so it's good. I'm gonna move on to tops. Okay, so it's tasks. So I created this top net. So if we go in, you get this local scheduler as default. So I created the wedge node, and I said I added an attribute called seed. The attribute type is float, and I've set a random value, which is the range. Start at 10.1 and then 11. Okay, random samples. How many random samples? 8 of them. Okay, now this is what you see here. Okay, at seed means it's looking for topnet. So if I right click here and dirty and cook this node, you get these little things. And note this part here. If I click here, oops, please don't do that. I'm just gonna disable this for now. If I click that, click here, notice here, it's going to change. So that's what that does. All right, why is it needed? That is needed if you want to see which seed gives you the best simulation, which seed you like. You don't have to change just the seed. You can add how many ever you want. You know, you can hook up the number of bursts. You can go into flare source, and you can increase the length, or whatever you want. I mean, no matter what you want, you can do all that. All right, here. But I've just given you an example here. That's all. So what am I doing after that? I'm just saying ROP fetch render all render. Okay. So I added a ROP fetch node, and I said the ROP path is render all, and render. And where's that from? That's from here. So render all there. So inside of here, file cache node, you have a render node. So that is that. Okay. And you definitely need this for it. So what happens is that when you right click and dirty and cook this node, it goes away and does all of the combinations and renders them all and writes them out to disk. And then you can just load this from disk, and you can just click this button to change whichever you want to look. I think it's on my preview video. Okay. So that's what that is. So finally, last one. Okay. I'm not going to go through these lights and cameras because they're just generic. It's no big deal. You can add some lights and whatnot. But actually, that reminds me, just as Sparks and Embers, I created Ember lights and Sparks lights. And I also had to create material for them. So I created a constant material, and I added them to Sparks and Embers. And also in here, Sparks geometry object, and the Embers light is geometry object here. I think you can just select them and click on geometry light, and it creates them for you. Okay. If you have trouble, and if the embers are appearing in one place and the lights are coming up in another place, then just go to transform and make sure all of these are 0. Then it'll correspond to the current location of the object itself. Okay. So that's done. Finally, last one. Going to stage. Stage is the new place where you do rendering in Karma. Okay, so I've set this up. So I'm bringing in volume, render all, out explosion, bringing in Sparks, bringing in Embers. It's called SOP import node, by the way. And then I'm bringing in the background, which is the grid. Okay, and then I'm merging them all, and then I'm saying scene import material. So material, I'm importing all materials basically, and then I am assigning those materials appropriately. Volume, Pyro shader, background to grid, flash lines, and embers to constant. Okay, is that still called flash lines? Sorry, just give me a second. I'm gonna switch to Solaris here, just for a second. Yeah, so there it is. It's actually wrong. Assign materials. That shouldn't be flash lines. That should be Sparks and Embers. Oops. So I'm selecting these two and clicking and dragging them across to the primitives. And then I'll do the same under material context. Here, I'll just click and drag the constant across to here. Okay, that's what that is. All right, and then I'm importing camera from the scene. Which camera I'm importing, and then I'm importing all the lights, asterisk, light, asterisk. Because if you look on the in the object, every one of them is called something light. Okay, so I'm just importing them all, and then I'm finally set a render node, Karma render node, and I'm rendering it out. I think there's another node called render properties, render settings. I think let me just Karma render properties. There you go. So you can set this up, and you can set the motion blurs and whatnot if you want. Okay, I didn't do it, but I'll leave it in anyway. So there it is. Okay, good. And actually, it's probably time to just do a little render of this. I'm gonna save it. and switch to Karma Beta. There you go. It's rendering away. All of the lights are coming into play. I'm not that familiar with Karma yet and the Solaris yet. So for now, this is just a basic setting. All right. I'm going to stop it now. All right, good. Okay, so that's the end of the walkthrough. Okay, and well, grid is just the grid. I got a grid. Let me change this. All right. I got a grid, and I'm editing it by selecting the points. For example, so those are the points I selected, and I pulled them up, and the grid itself is NURBS, and I'm converting them back to polygons. If you're going to render it in Mantra, you don't need to convert it to polygons. Even in, I think even in, I might as well try it, right? So if I switch it back to stage, and I render this in Karma, it comes up. So Karma and Mantra, you don't need to convert it back to polygons. But if you want to render this in Redshift, you need to convert it back to polygons, okay? So that's the grid. So that's the end of the walkthrough. I hope you liked it. Oh, I forgot to mention, unfortunately, I haven't cracked the shader for Redshift yet, but I think there is one on Gumroad. You can check it out. I'm not sure who the artist is, but I'm sure it's there. So you can go and grab that copy for Redshift rendering. But on this one, I've deleted all the Redshift nodes. So basically, I export it to Blender as VDB, and then I render using Blender cycles. And there's a separate video how to render using Blender cycles. Again, as I said before, I'll leave it in the description. So the project file, which is this reference file, will be available on my Gumroad. Please support me by purchasing the file. If this walkthrough was helpful, please give me a like, comment, subscribe, share. I'd really appreciate it if you can. Thank you very much for your time and your patience. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Hopefully 2021 is better. All right. Have a great day.